Cool. Right. Talking of writing, let's get on with the workshop. So we're privileged to welcome back David for the second time this this cohort. Hopefully this time we will get through the event. But he's spoken at the first two events, cohorts of PTYA. He's a founder of Rite of Passage. I'm sure many of you have heard of that course. Matt's obviously been through it, bought the merchandise, bought the t-shirt, exactly, all that kind of stuff. David's also got 2 newsletters, 2 podcasts, and loads of blog articles, loads of Twitter threads. He's very big on Twitter. And basically, he's delivered 2 absolutely outstanding guest workshops in the first 2 cohorts. So I expect this to be equally good. So yeah, over to you, David.
Thank you. Well, I apologize I was in Mexico a couple of weeks ago, and I did everything I could to get that set up, and the Wi-Fi wasn't fast enough. But I went through and I redid this entire presentation, and it is so much better than what I would have shared with you 2 weeks ago. So what I want to do is, when I first started sharing this, I was thinking very basic, like, what do I need to do to write well for YouTube? And I was getting started. Now, our YouTube channel isn't growing as fast as I would like, but our YouTube videos are absolutely awesome. I'm super proud of them. And I have a whole team that I work with. So take everything with a grain of salt. There's about, I have a producer, I have standard video editors, I have script writers. So take all this with a grain of salt. But at the same time, like, as a creator myself, one of the things that I'm always trying to do is basically say, how do I give my team clarity so that they can produce what they need to produce? And everything I'm going to say now is sort of what we've learned from about 5 months of producing videos every week, now shorts every week. And then afterwards, we can talk a little bit about growth, but then everything really begins with writing. And so as Angus said, I teach a course called Rite of Passage. It's 5 weeks. It's a lot like PTYA. And basically, it's all about the art of writing online, of building an audience, of becoming a citizen of the internet. And this is my YouTube channel. So right now, we're at 13,000 subs. Our most popular video is about Kendrick Lamar. But like I said, I think that the subscribers numbers really don't match the quality of the videos. And that's how doing anything online works. The following that you have is always a lagging indicator of the work that you're doing, never a leading one. So today we're going to talk about 3 things. We're going to talk about why you should write, how to actually improve your writing, and then specifically writing for YouTube. And I want to start with the video that inspired me to start making YouTube videos. This was many years ago. And I'm going to sort of start with this. I'm going to end with this. And it's made by a guy named Casey Neistat, who has 12.5 million YouTube subscribers and sort of invented the vlog that you're all familiar with. So sound on.
To the haters, the doubters, my 7th grade vice principal. To everyone who's ever told anyone with a dream they can't. This video's for you. Keep your head down, follow the rules, do as you're told, play it safe. Wait your turn, ask permission, learn to compromise. This is terrible advice.
This is terrible advice. Screw all of that. We are YouTubers now, and we are people who are part of this generation of people who are becoming citizens of the internet. What that means is that we are now global citizens. We aren't tied to place. We aren't tied to a certain office, having to go to work at some specific place, reporting to the same boss who lives 2 miles away from us. No, we are a new generation of people who actually understand this. And what YouTube is about being a citizen of the internet. It's about getting acclimated to this new world that we're all becoming a part of. And what I see is the gift of YouTube, the gift of being alive in 2021, is that you have this tool in your pocket. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about writing. And we're going to talk about what can you do with writing to create excellent YouTube videos, and then from there become a citizen of the internet. So I want to talk about writing, and I want to start with the paradox of writing, the paradox of creativity that shows up everywhere. It shows up in writing, it shows up in YouTube. That great writing, great YouTube videos too, they look effortless. But because the ideas in them are so clear, casual viewers, casual readers don't appreciate how much time it takes to develop them. What people see when they see something is they see perception and they see reality. And what perception is that, oh, you just had this idea, you produced that thing, it was so simple. And the truth is that is not true at all. And if you have that idea in your head, you're not going to get anywhere as a creator, absolutely nowhere. Because what you need to realize is that in order to create anything, whether it's a work of writing, whether it's a presentation like the one I'm giving right now, or whether it's a YouTube video, what you're doing is it's like a river. You're going down the river, you're sort of floating downstream, but sometimes you end up in these actuaries that don't actually lead to anything. You end up kind of wasting a lot of time. And so what you want to do when you create YouTube videos, when you write, is you want to think of that process like a river. Because what it's going to allow you to do is, first, not get discouraged as a creator, and second of all, provide a much better experience for your audience, one that isn't so linear, one that's more experiential, and actually conveys the twists and turns of what it means to do creative work. And you'll see in this YouTube short, I call that the scenic route.
Writing is harder than it looks because readers think that a writer just took a straight line from the genesis of an idea to its final form. But in reality, the writer has to go through all these dead ends in order to develop what eventually becomes the final piece. So this is why an idea is like a river. In order to go from the beginning to the end, you don't go in a straight line. You sort of journey all over the place. And also you end up at all these dead ends. And in order to find where you're going, you have to follow this compass of intuition. And I think that as a writer, you want to give some of that experience to your reader. You want them to feel what it was like to discover an idea in a way that's fun. And you want to give them a little bit of the scenic route. But if you meander all over the place, then you're not giving the reader the sense of urgency that is a part of all good writing.
So what I'm trying to get at there is this idea that whenever you are creating something, whenever you write, there are two things that are going on. When you're a creator, just like that perception of reality graphic, what you're actually doing is you're going all over the place. You know, I've been working on these drawings like the one I just showed you. And for every one drawing that I do, I probably discard 4 or 5 of them. And so this is what happens. This is the frustration of creative work that we need to remember, that it never looks like a straight line, but to others, we then want to polish our creative process up. But I think that what's very counterintuitive when you tell a story, right? So take any sort of movie, right? You could basically take the movie Parasite, right? Won an Oscar, great movie from South Korea. You could basically say, oh, a housekeeper, comes into the house and all these sorts of things happen. Everything blows up at the end. That is the straight line, but that does not communicate the epicness, the grandeur, the magnificence of this movie, of this story. What a movie does is it takes that straight line, but it gives you that sort of scenic route. That's what it means to tell a good story. But then we got to ask, okay, but then how does this actually apply to writing? And how do you actually get started? And so what I want to do is I want to just go back to this Casey video. And I'm going to come back to it in a second. And this whole section is about this idea called imitate, then innovate. And so my advice to you, or the advice that the world gives you, is don't intimidate others. You need to find your own voice. This is what the world tells you. But hey, Casey, I need your help here.
This is terrible advice.
Literally the worst advice ever, not to imitate people. This is said to people all the time, that you should start off finding your own voice. And I think it is totally a sham. It leads to creator's block. It's basically a form of arrogance, that I'm so smart that I can't actually build upon the ideas of other people. You know what? I have this beautiful blank slate in my head, and I'm just going to cultivate that. And I'm not even going to look to other people for inspiration. It's terrible advice. Thanks, Casey. So what I did when I started my YouTube channel was I looked at 3 people who I wanted to imitate. And these were 3 people that if I could combine all of their videos, I would end up with something slick, something polished. And then what I would do is I would start by imitating them, and then I would innovate on top of them. First one, Nerd Writer. The dude makes unbelievable video essays. They're incredible. They're like these mini films. They're like 6 to 10 minutes each. They're wonderful. You watch something, all of a sudden you can't see the world the same way again. I mean, the one on the top left about when the world became a De Chirico painting. Oh my goodness. It's like you walked around the world for the past year looking at how the pandemic actually represented, you were living inside of the paintings of this Italian artist. Incredible. That was the first one. The second one was Wendover Productions. These much longer video essays. They're about transportation and the economy and aviation. And for years, what I just did, and actually still, I'll just sit down at lunch and I'll just watch one of these videos. Actually, a lot of what I know about the aviation industry is inspired by these videos. And I once paid somebody to transcribe for me every single video that he had ever made about the aviation industry so that then I could start writing about it, so that I could have that in all my notes. I love this channel. And then the third is a pretty unknown channel, kind of a scrub YouTuber, but you know what? He's a cool guy, Ali Abdaal. And Ali has done an incredible job. This is why you're all here. I think that what I really admire about Ali is he has told his story in a way that is both useful to others and in a way that allows people to see themselves in Ali's story, right? See the story originally when he started, really focusing on his experience at Cambridge and really focused on how to get good grades, how to study differently. Now a little bit more focused on productivity and time management. And all of us, I think we should embrace our imitation of Ali. He's somebody who has been wildly successful. He's somebody who's worth admiring. And when I started my channel, I said, you know what? If I can be like Ali Abdaal, if I can be like Wendover Productions, and if I can be like Nerdwriter and basically fuse those three channels together, good things are going to happen. So my advice to you is embrace imitation. Find your favorite creators, copy their style, and then eventually you're going to end up developing your own. And so here's an example from the writing world.
You know, Hunter S. Thompson handwrote every word of The Great Gatsby multiple times just so he could feel what it was like to write a world-class novel. And then there's John Cleese of Monty Python fame, who copied jokes that he heard on the radio just so that he could recite them to his friends at school all day. But my favorite story comes from Quentin Tarantino, who's notorious for copying films that he likes. And then what he'll do is he'll sketch similar shots into his own movies. And these visual references to other movies have become one of Tarantino's trademarks.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.
And paradoxically, it's because of that copying that Tarantino has a more unique style than just about any film director in the world. And it's from Tarantino that we learned that the road to originality is paved with the inspiration of others.
The road to originality is paved with the inspiration of others. I love that idea because great artists build upon each other's work. They remix the ideas of people who've come before them. And if you're going to sit here right now and tell me, you know what, if Tarantino, who's got basically the most original movie style that there is, we know what we're going to get with a Tarantino movie, right? We're going to get some epic dialogue. We're going to get some blood. We're going to get some violence. And you know what? It's going to be a big old buildup and it's all going to blow up at the end with some crazy climax where a bunch of people are going to die. We basically know that. And people wait and wait and wait and wait and wait for the next Tarantino movie. And it comes out and they flock to the theaters. But Tarantino says it himself. He was working in a movie studio. He was basically selling movies, watching movies all the time. The great creators are the ones who consume ideas differently. You know, the other night I'm sitting down and I forget how I got into this. Oh, this is what it was. So my friend, his name is Tom. He lives in Ireland. Really good guy. And he basically texts me and he's like, hey, you got to watch this video about Eminem. And I'm like, okay, thanks, Tom. You know, like, why should I watch this video about Eminem? So it's like this 60 minutes clip with Eminem and Anderson Cooper, and they're sitting in Eminem's studio and stuff. So, you know, they're talking, they're going back and forth. And Eminem sort of starts off, he's like talking about how you can rhyme the word orange differently. And then he's talking about his note-taking system. I'm like, damn, Eminem, I should go investigate his creative process. So then I go watch this other video. And it's Eminem talking to this other rapper, I don't know his name. And they spend like 6 to 8 minutes talking about how they consume each other's music. It's the most beautiful thing ever. Both of them memorized each other's lyrics, but not just the lyrics, the way that the bass and all the music underneath it, how that actually moved, all the subtleties of the music. And they're going through different creators, and you could hear, Eminem says something to the effect of, basically, I'm listening to things that the average listener doesn't even know is existing. And then once I start creating things, it's the same thing. I'm so dialed into the details down here, and other people are just sort of at the big picture level. But that's what it means to do great creative work. It means to actually be a conscious consumer of ideas. For me, Nerdwriter, Ali Abdaal, Wendover Productions, to actually take that and to really dissect what is it that they're actually doing. My business partner, Tiago Forte, basically equates the world to like an old junkyard that you walk through, right? You're sort of looking at these old cars and stuff. You're like, you know what? This front bumper is like a little bit sort of messed up, but what I can do is I can kind of take the bumper, I can sort of hammer it together and actually use it for something. This is what we're doing as creators. We're sort of looking at the world for inspiration. We're bringing it in. We're kind of switching it up, folding it. And that then is how we imitate, then innovate, remix the ideas of people who've come before us. Exactly. Put a sticker on it. I love that comment in the chat. Actually, my favorite idea here is from Jan Utzon. So Jan Utzon, this is him. And he's a famous architect because he designed my single favorite building in the entire world. I might fly clear across the world to go see this thing again at some point. The Sydney Opera House. This thing is magnificent, and it looks even better in person than it does in this photo. And basically what he did is, you would say, wow, this is such an original building. Man, like, can you think of any building like the Sydney Opera House? No, right? It's one of a kind. Wrong. Turns out he was inspired by a guy named Felix Canella. And Canella did a lot of his architecture in Spain. And so what Jan Utzon did is he was beginning to think about what kind of building he wanted to create. He basically saw the way that the blues and the whites interacted, the way that these curves actually moved. This is, I believe, in Valencia in Spain. And then this is another building that Felix Canella designed. And so what Jan Utzon did was he actually looked at these, and then as he began to draw the blueprints for the Sydney Opera House, you can very much see how he went from this, how he went from this, and then how he ended up with this blueprint, and ultimately the Sydney Opera House, which looks as beautiful during the nighttime as it does during the day. So what we've seen here, from Tarantino to Eminem to Hunter S. Thompson, we've gone all over the place, to John Cleese of Monty Python fame. What we've done is we've seen all over the place that people are imitating others, are great creators. But the question is, if you imitate others, how are you going to find your own voice? What are you actually going to do there? And now let's go in one more genre, comedy.
But what happens if you can't copy perfectly? This was a big epiphany for me, and it's that the best thing about copying is that the failure to do so is a success in and out of itself. When you do a bad job copying somebody, you end up revealing your own voice. Take, for example, talk show comedians who have tried to copy their idols, failed, and then become great themselves. So Johnny Carson tried to copy Jack Benny, but failed and won 6 Emmy Awards. Then David Letterman tried to copy Johnny Carson, but failed and became one of America's great television hosts. In reflecting on his own influences, another comedian, Conan O'Brien, said, quote, "It is our failure to become our perceived ideal that ultimately defines us and makes us unique." See, all of these comedians learned that imitation reveals our identity, especially when we fall short of the people that we admire.
So the point there is that your voice reveals itself, and that what we try to do is we basically try to copy others. We find resistance in certain parts of the process. We say, you know what, this doesn't square with me. This doesn't vibe with me. I am going to go create my own vibe. And for me, my vibe is focusing on ideas that are evergreen, focusing on ideas that are intelligent, fun, energetic, nothing cheesy, things that are a bit more sophisticated. I really want to treat my audience like they're intelligent people. My Bezos video that I just published, which I'll get into in a minute, it was pretty complicated in terms of what was this guy doing in terms of building a company that would survive long beyond him. And I said, you know what? I don't want to dumb the ideas down. I want a smart audience, and that is just my style. And I want people to ultimately say in one sentence, I learned a lot and the video was surprisingly beautiful. And so I have different guidelines for myself that I end up writing down. And I want these guidelines, they're not taking away my creativity. They're just making my decisions simple in terms of what I'm looking for, what my team is looking for, and all these sorts of things. For example, no stock photos. Stock photos they're just awful. And we just said, no, they're totally banned. Anything that looks stock, we're not going to use. Why? Because images should enhance what's on the screen. And I, once again, imitate then innovate. I'm consuming YouTube videos, and it's like that junkyard. I'm looking for things that then I can basically pull in, rope into my work. And so Nerdwriter has a great video about a painting called The Death of Socrates, which actually hangs in the Met in New York. I still very much remember seeing it for the first time. I had no idea what this painting was. My friend, he was like, you gotta look at this thing. So we ended up sort of Googling it and all this. And then I came home and I saw the Death of Socrates painting. I'd remembered that this video was good. But look at how the Nerdwriter, right? You just look at this painting and you don't know much about it. Look at how the Nerdwriter in like 15 to 20 seconds uses images to actually enhance what is being said. Look at how he's actually taking advantage of the unique methods of video here. This is what so deeply inspires me and what I want to imitate in my own work.
One way to read The Death of Socrates is right to left. The anguish of Socrates' followers, curling and twisting, opens up onto the calm expression of the man himself and flows down through his right arm, which hovers over the cup of poison. The space between the hand and the cup, the exact center of the image, is the seat of maximum narrative charge. Then it falls back into the pain of the man who delivers the poison, who turns his gaze away from Socrates, and finally comes to rest on the man sitting at the foot of the bed.
How good is that? My Lord. It's just his ability to take that painting. And you start off and you look at the thing, the whole painting is there. And you're like, how do I process this thing? And then he uses light, these simple effects, to basically just walk yourself through the piece. And it's so simple, but it's refined, and it actually adds to what's being said. And so every time that I sit down and I look at a video, I think of that little section of how do we do work of that quality. Of the baseline idea there is that you can use visuals to enhance what's being shown. And I don't want the visuals to just represent. I want them to enhance what's being shown so that we can have text plus sound plus image and have 1 + 1 + 1 there equal 4 equal 5. That is what it means to do great work as a YouTuber. And so we look at this, we have the GIF, we can just watch it again. It's so beautiful. Walking through it, moving the images around, and ultimately showing rather than just telling. And so imitate, then innovate. The question is, okay, you accept all that, but then why should you write? What is it about writing itself that's going to make us better YouTubers? And the first thing is that writing makes you a better speaker. And so a couple years ago, just this crazy chance thing that happened was I got to interview Neil deGrasse Tyson, arguably the most famous astrophysicist who's alive today. And we did it in his office. And this was on the day that his book came out. And I'm like 21 years old at the time interviewing this guy and a total novice, but I'll never forget what he said to me here.
Hardly any sentence in public comes out of my mouth unless I've written it down once before. And people say, oh, you speak it poetically. And I've thought out those words before. It's a fundamental part of what I'm doing when I'm writing, because I want the paragraph to rise up out of the page and then settle within you as your receptors grab a hold of it. The potency of words that we all know what they mean. I'm not talking about big words. You know, you can use big words and people will call you smart. But for me, short words that are potent are what should be promoted and stimulated in conversation and writing and all the rest.
I love that point. So what he's trying to do there is he's saying, he starts off and he says he basically doesn't say anything in public that he hasn't written down before. And think about that. Doesn't say anything in public. This is a public figure he's probably doing something every day. He's on Star Talk, he's on Netflix, he's on television, all these sorts of things. And when I heard that sentence, I did not believe him. And then I started actually writing every day. It was because of conversations like this that I said, I'm going to start writing every day. And now I totally believe it. And then what he does in the second half of that video is he says that short words that are potent are what he wants to focus on. He says, I want my paragraphs to rise up out of the page and settle within you as your receptors grab a hold of it. So he wants his writing, his words, his ideas to actually come alive, to be as magnificent as the concepts of time and space that he's actually talking about. And then also, he's saying, okay, you can use big words, or you can use these short words that are potent, that are strong, that are powerful, that actually pierce inside of your mind and become memorable. That's what he says should be promoted. And I say, when you have one of the best communicators of science of all time telling you something so densely there, I listened. It was really helpful. And I saw a comment in the chat about scripting videos, and that's what you can do. You can actually script your videos. It takes a little bit more work up front, but there's a lot of benefits. So here's what I'm doing. Right now I'm making a video about Morgan Housel, who wrote The Psychology of Money. And so what I just do is I start off with some very simple ideas to basically say, okay, this is how I want the video to look. Here's how I want it to feel. Here's what I want the angle to be. And so title, temporary title, how to be selfish and successful like Morgan Housel. There's a reason why we use the word selfish. Thumbnail concept, what's that going to look like? Topic, what's that going to look like? Shiny dime, for all you Write a Passage students who know exactly what this is our language for what is that one thing, the one dime that you can put on the floor that then all of a sudden takes care of everything else. And it's almost like a tweet length summary of what you're saying. And so I'm saying, paradoxically, if you write for an audience, you won't be a successful writer. But if you write for yourself and write about what you would want to read, then it will resonate with others and you're more likely to find success. This is basically what Morgan is saying. This is what it means to be a selfish writer. And then we're saying, what is the essential question? What is the point of tension? What we try to do is and I'm going to get to this in a second, we try to open up a question right at the beginning of the video, have that question sort of hang, right? We're using the narrative tactics of a Hollywood movie, have that question hang. What is the open question that's going to keep somebody drawn in? For us, how can you always write exactly what you want to write and also be highly successful? I mean, Morgan is one of the most prolific and well-known financial writers in the world, and his new book, The Psychology of Money, has sold more than 500,000 copies, and I think it came out in like February or something. And then we're saying here's a word count, and then we have some script writing guidelines that I'll get to in a second. And my recommendation to you is at the very least script or introductions. Basically what we do after every video is we go into the YouTube analytics and we look at basically the curve, the bend of how people drop off. And we basically, like, a bunch of people are inevitably going to drop off and say the first 30 seconds, but say that we have like 50% retention, which is I think what we started with. We're 30 seconds in, half of the people were still watching. Now I think we're up to like 75, something like that. And we've done that by scripting the introductions. And basically, we just have a trifecta. 3 things that we do in our introductions. I'm going to show you exactly what this looks like. We tell the viewer what we're going to talk about. we mention the title, and we create tension. So we do these three things. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you an example from my recent video about Jeff Bezos, and then I made a transcript, and we're going to actually go through how I do all these things. So tell, title, and tension. Here we go.
Jeff Bezos is stepping down from Amazon. His global empire, which spans 58 countries, employs 575,000 people, and is currently valued at $1.6 trillion. Handing off a company of this magnitude can be disastrous, as we've seen with businesses like Viacom and Gucci. But Jeff Bezos has been planting the seeds for his trillion-dollar exit strategy since the day he founded the company in his Bellevue, Washington garage. Today, we're going to look back at Bezos' original design plans for Amazon and talk about how he's now built a company that can operate without his everyday involvement.
So here is that transcript. And as you can see, what we do is we say you must reference the title in the first 2 sentences of the video. Keep this short, about 50 words, and this introductory section should be less than 20 seconds. Get to the point. Just get to the point. You don't need this big setup. I always think of the movie Casino Royale. The very beginning of the movie is a crazy chase scene. And I remember being in the theater and just thinking, oh my goodness, I'm just hooked from day one. And what I do is I start off with basically creating this tension, referencing the title immediately. Jeff Bezos is stepping down from Amazon. Then what I'm doing is now I'm really sort of telling people about what they're going to get into. Global empire, 58 countries, 575,000 people, company valued at $1.6 trillion. Just trying to throw a bunch of stats to basically raise the magnitude, the importance of this video. Then I keep going into them, telling people what we're going to discuss. And then right at the end, I basically end with some more tension here. We're going to look back at Bezos' original design plans for Amazon and how he's built a company to operate without his everyday involvement. I mean, that's basically a question. It's a statement. It's a question that's really a statement. But you could have rewritten this and you could have said, how did Jeff Bezos build a company that could operate without his everyday involvement? And we'll talk about his original design plans, right? It's really a question, even though it's a statement. And so what I'm doing here is I'm coming out, I'm saying, these are the stakes. This is who this guy is. This is a surprising thing that you didn't know about. A lot of people have struggled to actually transition the power and control to their companies. And now you're going to learn about exactly how Bezos did this and why he's been thinking about doing this for the last, 25 years or something. There's a lot of information in that intro. There's not a single word wasted, not one. So that's why I recommend scripting your videos. But then why else do you script your videos? Well, I think that there's two things. One is eliminating confusion and the other is eliminating dead space. So let's start off with confusion. You know, a lot of writing is sort of like door handles. I don't know if you've ever come across a door handle like this, but you come up, this is called a Norman door. And you come up to it and the handles tell you to pull, but the sign tells you to push. And most people, when they see a door like this, they pull, because naturally when you see handles, the world is telling you pull, 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 yank it, but you actually have to push this door. This is exactly the kind of experience you don't want to give your viewers on YouTube. You don't want to give your writers when they read. There's all these built-in expectations that we have as a society where these sorts of doors, these pull-push doors, drive us insane. We have an expectation that if there's sort of a flat slab of metal, you push. If there's a handle, you pull. And if there's a knob, you turn the knob to the right. These are things that we have societal expectations of. It's always worth asking when you're making YouTube videos, when you're writing, what is the equivalent in what you're working on? But then also to eliminate dead space. You can say something without saying anything. And in a world as competitive as modern YouTube, where there's all these creators, you cannot be like this guy. You cannot be like this guy.
So that's what I think. Yeah, that's so true. You know, I'm really glad you brought that up. I think this is really important. And if I can just speak about this for a minute, because I've really been thinking about this quite a lot. And here's the thing, right? When it all comes down to it and we like really begin to understand, like, this is what I think. But this is why
we've all listened to so many podcasts like that. And it reminds me of this quote from Jason Zweig. where he's a writer for the Wall Street Journal. And he's saying, do the opposite. Don't be like that guy. You know, it's a joke, but he's just blabbing back and forth. He's saying stuff without saying anything at all. Jason Zweig says, most people handle words as if they were pennies, light, cheap, disposable. Instead, I want you to handle them as if they were manhole covers or 45-pound weights in the gym. Think before you pick them up. Look before you put them down. Make sure you choose the right one and put it in the right place. Words shouldn't be cheap to you and interchangeable. They should be dear to you and fit for purpose. And the reason why that video is funny, the reason why it's just so accurate is that so many YouTubers, so many podcasters, they treat their words like they're pennies. You got to treat them like they're weights at the gym. Every word should serve a purpose. And so what I find is that you start there, you really focus on every word serving a purpose. That's why I script all my videos. And then I say, okay, now that we have the content down and it's a lot of information is being delivered with good economy of language, I then say, how do we create a rhythm? And in order to do this, you want to vary your sentence length. And so generally what you want to do is you want to default to short sentences. You want to ask yourself things like, can I replace this comma with a period? And you can do this in business writing. You can do this in script writing, whatever it is. Can I replace this comma with a period? Default to short sentences. But even more than that, that is really just a tool that allows you to pretend that you're in a symphony as a writer and write music. To basically be there and just create an experience for your viewer, for your listener, that is emotional, that is weighty. And in order to do that, you don't just write words, you write music. So let me show you what this looks like. This is a image from a guy named Gary Provost. This is my single favorite piece of writing advice ever. I think about it every single time I write a script, an essay, whatever it is. So listen to the difference between these two things. This sentence has 5 words. Here are 5 more words. 5-word sentences are fine, but several together become monotonous. Listen to what is happening. The writing is getting boring. The sound of it drones. It is like a stuck record. The ear demands some variety. It's just not that interesting to listen to. Nobody talks like that. This writing is boring. This is what happens if you only have short sentences. But now listen. I vary the sentence length and I create music. Music. The writing sings. It has a pleasant rhythm, a lilt, a harmony. I use shortened sentences. I use short sentences, and I use sentences of medium length. And sometimes when I am certain the reader is rested, I will engage him with a sentence of considerable length, a sentence that burns with energy and builds with all the impetus of a crescendo. The roll of the drums, the crash of the cymbals, sounds that say, listen to this. It is important. So write with a combination of short, medium, and long sentences. Create a sound that pleases the reader's ear. Don't just write words. Write music, ladies and gentlemen. And here's what's crazy. We naturally do this. About 6 months ago, I was hosting a workshop and somebody asked me a question about imposter syndrome. And nothing makes me go off like a question about imposter syndrome. I published a video on Twitter. It has now been seen 133,000 times. And so what I did was I said, you know what? I'm going to basically color code what I said, which I just said totally naturally and off the cuff. And this is what was crazy. There were all of these different sentence lengths. There were short sentences in yellows. There were a bit longer sentences in green and magenta. Then I had a short sentence towards the second, towards the bottom of the third paragraph. I was really trying to emphasize something. No, total imposter. And then I said, but once you realize everyone's an imposter, you realize that no one's an imposter. And you realize that you have a responsibility to yourself, to your friends, and to the world to share ideas, because this is how we advance as a culture. I said, you know what? I want to emphasize that. And I'm going to stop there. And I'm going to come in with one more short sentence to stop, to end with emphasis. This is how we advance as a civilization. So what's crazy is everything I'm telling you is probably stuff you don't know, but stuff that you're already doing. And finally, I want you in your YouTube videos, whatever this means for you, whether you want to come up with a comedy channel, whether you want to create beautiful video essays and documentaries, whatever it is that you do as a YouTuber, maybe it's a vlog, it doesn't matter, because this is 2 words that help any internet creator: get wonky. And my inspiration from this comes from Kurt Vonnegut, the famous writer. And he says you should pick one person and write just for that person. Forget for the moment that other people will be reading what you write, and just write as if you're talking to that person. You know, it's so interesting. It's whenever we talk to somebody, we actually have fun going down these rabbit holes, exploring our crazy interests, the nerd, the geek within us. But then all of a sudden we start teaching to an audience, and all of a sudden we start writing or creating for the average viewer, the average listener, the average reader. Don't write for the average reader. You know, if you do that, you're going to end up with all these people who just halfway care about what you have to say. That's not an audience. An audience is people, even if it's a smaller number of people, who deeply resonate with your beliefs, your values, your interests. That's what an audience is. That's the benefit of creating on YouTube. These relationships that come from doing so. And I was inspired by a creator named Rhonda Patrick. She has a podcast called Found My Fitness. And if you listen to it, you know, she goes into like the nuances, like, oh, let's talk about LDL cells for like an hour and a half, but it's amazing. She goes with so much depth. And yeah, she doesn't have the biggest audience in the world, but she has an audience of people who are willing to pay for her stuff, an audience of people, of other doctors who are willing to help her to improve her ideas. She's now a central figure in the health and wellness industry, and it's because she gets wonky. Same thing in the investing world with Patrick O'Shaughnessy, who runs a podcast called Invest Like the Best. It's incredible. And what he's found is that he just goes down, tries to find the wonkiest, craziest path. And he says, you know what, let's dive into these crazy ideas rather than talking about, oh, it's something simple like supply and demand. Hey, let's go into I'm making some up here, right? How did Coca-Cola's distribution strategy begin becoming so dominant between the 20s and the 50s? And he would just spend a whole episode on that, but it doesn't exist anywhere else. And so what we try to do is we try to say, oh, the internet, we have all these benefits of scale. But the problem is when you try to chase scale, when you try to do what everybody else is doing, those methods just make you like everybody else. On the internet, the more focused you are, the more wonky and niche you are, the bigger your audience is, because the internet rewards the edges of distributions. It rewards people who are different. It rewards the geeks, the nerds, the people who just love ideas for the sake of ideas. And if you do that, to go back to imitate then innovate, that then is how you end up innovating. You end up just diving through your interests and saying, I'm going to get wonky. These are my people. And that's when YouTube becomes a serendipity engine for you. So get wonky. And so with wonky writing, some examples are attention to detail, quirky writing style, extreme precision, niche subjects, singular experiences, geeking out, obsessive research. This is what I do as a wonky creator. And here I'm inspired by Christopher Nolan.
Nolan's obsession, his wonkiness, is what makes his art so distinct. And his movies have grossed more than $5 billion, and he's been nominated for multiple Oscar awards, mostly in praise of his mastery of visual effects, beautiful establishing shots, and gripping action sequences. And as creators, we can learn from his wonkiness to get better at our craft. When I say wonky, I'm describing somebody who has an obsessive interest in the nitty-gritty details of a particular subject. Wonky people are willing to explore a niche so deeply that they become experts on detail that other people won't even bother with. And by the time that Nolan was ready to create Inception, he had already developed the reputation of a brilliant director. He asked his visual effects designer, Chris Corbel, and his go-to production designer to build him a colossal steel contraption which melded together with 7 steel rings, each 30 feet in diameter. And every ring was placed 16 feet along the hallway and rotated by a 55 horsepower electric motor. The result was this amazing centrifugal hallway set. And then just as you start to soak in the near absurdity of Nolan's demands, you realize that there was also a whole other vertical corridor made separately, which used wires to manipulate how actors moved up and down the set. And all this took 3 weeks to shoot. And when I went back to look at the script for Inception, this part of the movie was only just a paragraph and a half of the script, and it only corresponded to 30 seconds of screen time.
So why did we just watch that? Well, the first thing is I wanted to show you what it looks like to have visuals that actually enhance what is being said. I mean, I could have said the centrifugal ring, but you would have no idea what that meant. You can actually see it spinning. You can see it rotating. Then we show the script, right? We show, hey, this is what 30 seconds of script actually looks like. And I think that the image actually allows the video to resonate so much more. It's actually funny. We went into the YouTube stats for that whole section from the centrifugal ring to the end of the script. It's basically flat. There's like no drop off. It's like the data just shows that people are very hooked at that section. But why do we just watch that? I also wanted to show you that people love Christopher Nolan. They love Tarantino because they are wonky. And wonkiness is sort of that answer, the sort of antithesis to the imitation at the beginning. Wonky is what allows you to then imitate. And I say with the internet, one thing I've learned is that you should ignore the social incentives that shame people for being different. Be more unique, be more different, be more of yourself and get wonky. And as you do, the world comes to you. Because the magic of writing online, of making videos online, is attracting the kinds of people who are almost impossible to meet in the real world, but who actually reach out to you. Reach out to you when you share wonky ideas. And I'm reminded of this quote from The Wire, famous HBO show. And David Simon, he says, when I thought, this whole notion of writing for the person who understands nothing, the average reader, he has to die. I can't have him in my head. And so the person I started writing for was the homicide detective. What he's doing, remember those circles? There's the big circle that's sort of opaque. There's the small circle that's very passionate. That's what David Simon is doing. That's why people are obsessed with The Wire, obsession and quirkiness. You get back to those wonky writing examples, attention to detail, quirky writing style, all these sorts of things. But then you say, that's so much work. Well, what Ollie helps you do is he helps you build these creativity engines in PTYA. And it's not so much work if you're taking notes. And so what you're doing is I want you to sort of separate your creative process into active and ambient research. And so what ambient research is it's passive research. It's already happening. It's free. It's playful. You're just out in the world experiencing stuff. And you're going out, you're having conversations with people, you're writing stuff down, and you're just passively consuming, saving ideas. And then active research, this is sort of what we're taught in school. I'm going to go to the library, I'm going to reserve a whole day, I'm going to read all these books. No, make YouTube videos about things that you've already done the ambient research on, things that you've already collected notes on. And then what we do is most people are just doing all this research and then they're writing at the end. I say do the opposite. Think of your life as a game of Tetris. You have your notes that you're sort of collecting. They're all these blocks. You have your experiences that are all these other blocks. And then you're combining them into quality writing, a quality YouTube video, whatever it is that you want to do. And so what you end up doing is you end up ambiently taking notes passively as you collect experiences, as you're just living your life. Just write stuff down as you're reading books. Actually go save those notes. And then you do a little bit of time writing. And then if you need at the end to just fill in a couple gaps, that then is when you do the research that you're taught in school. But by doing this, you end up getting so much more done research should come at the end, because you should have a note-taking system that is ambiently collecting ideas, which is why in Write a Passage, the very first thing we do, help people build a note-taking system. Help them ambiently collect ideas, and then it's going to help with your YouTube videos, it's going to help with your writing. And as I always say, collect the dots, then connect the dots. Collect the dots in your life. Go just collect stuff. And then you sort of sit down, and at some point, maybe it's deliberate, maybe it's serendipitous, you end up going from collecting the dots, which you mostly do by reading, and then all of a sudden you piece things together by writing, and you end up with these little dots that all of a sudden turn into a really cute puppy. And so I'm going to end with one final example of a couple years ago. This probably would have been like 2018. I got to meet James Clear. I got to interview him on the podcast. And after I met James, this was right after his book had come out, I then was like, wow, I really like this guy. He's super interesting, very kind, really warm heart. And I'm going to just collect as many notes that I can about James Clear. And then a couple months ago, I was looking at the Amazon charts, and James Clear is literally number 2 on Amazon between 2 people who lived in the White House, Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. And I was like, oh my goodness, I got to make a video about this. Why was his book so successful? And so what I did was I'd done all that ambient research. I just started collecting notes for a YouTube video that I'm working on now, sort of brought all this together, had different ideas, his marketing strategy, my commentary. You'll see as I keep scrolling down, there's screenshots, the one I just showed you. The next one is a tweet where he talks about parts of his writing process for what he did to create Atomic Habits, actually writing all this time online, spending time tweeting, collected all this into notes. You might say, wow, this must have taken you forever. How did you do this? Yo, collecting these notes took me 15 minutes. 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Because what I have, the thing that allows me to create these videos, the thing that allows us to publish these videos every week, and I run a business, I'm writing a ton. I just spent the last month traveling in southern Mexico, basically digitally nomading. I mean, what allows me to do all these things in a way where I'm not working crazy hours. I mean, I'm golfing today, I golfed Monday, I golf Sunday, like I'm enjoying my life. What allows me to do all this is that I spend a ton of time note-taking, a little bit of time writing, we do some active research at the end, and let's end with one more Casey clip.
When you're a creator, all you need is your phone, an internet connection, and a good idea. A story you want to share, something you need to say.
Confidence is within yourself.
And then the rest is history. If you do it right, you get to quit the day job, make friends from places you've never been, meetups, collaborations.
It's just 2 boys and 2 video cameras.
A life moving so fast and so full, you won't even have time to process it. So to my fellow creators, I say, keep creating, keep doing the work.
Hey guys!
And never forget, you don't have to listen to anyone, because in this new world, no one knows anything.
Hi, haters.
The haters, the doubters are all drinking champagne in the top deck of the Titanic, and we are the fucking iceberg.
That's right. We are the iceberg. I love that. We are the iceberg. YouTube is disrupting media, becoming a citizen of the internet. This is a new way of being. And I think that's why we're here in Part-Time YouTuber Academy, learning how to build a YouTube audience, creating all the time. And that's why I'm such a fan of writing. So Write a Passage, the next cohort begins on September 8th. Matt Tillotson here. I think he's coming back for his 5th time. And for all of you, if you are interested in joining Write a Passage or interested in learning about my writing process, I just dropped in a 50-day email series that basically will build upon all the ideas that I shared with you. You'll get an email every day for 50 days, and you'll learn a lot about the craft of writing, all of which you can apply to YouTube videos. So we are the iceberg. Thank you very much, everybody.
Cool. Thank you very much, David. That was epic as usual, and love the extra bits that you've added in for this cohort. Really, really interesting. Have you got any time for any questions from everyone, or do you need to rush off?
I don't need to rush off, I think. Let me just make sure. I really want to hang out. I don't need to rush off. Cool. I got a lunch at 1:30, but
Great.
So
Great.
I got.
Okay, cool.
I don't want to do an hour and a half Q&A, but I have an hour and a half.
No, let's do 20 minutes then. Taz.
Hi Dave, thank you for the presentation, it was really cool. I watched the one from last year as well, so yeah, I really did like the changes. I just wanted to ask you, do you use a teleprompter?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah, I have it right.
What's the process like getting used to it?
Dude, it's not that hard. I mean, basically what I do is, sorry, I'm just pouring myself water. You talk for an hour, your throat gets a little hoarse. Here, so I have it right here. So it fits in this thing, which was great because I could bring it to Mexico last month. And it's not that hard. So what I do is I have a couple different lenses. And so the lens that I'm on right now is, look, like I can zoom in and out with it. So basically there's a bunch of trade-offs. And so this is like my, my Zoom teaching lens. I have like a much nicer camera that I actually record YouTube videos with. And then what I have is, this is, Taz, to like really answer your question. What you want to figure out is basically the right millimeter lens. And the higher the number of millimeters, the more like the effective zoom will be. And so then you can stand farther back. A lot of people who look at teleprompters, their eyes sort of move and twirl. That's the first thing. The second thing that really helped me was with the teleprompter, actually standing up when I speak rather than sitting down. I don't know why. Well, like I can have a lot of energy if I'm hanging out with you because I can look at Sarah, I can look at Matt, I can look at Charles, I can look at Daryl, I can look at Zuma, Juliana. Like I can look at all of you right now. Tanya, I see you, you're smiling, like you have a great smile. And I can actually get a lot of energy from all of you by being here. I just can't do that when I record YouTube videos. I get freaking bored. So I end up standing and it's helped me a lot. But then the other thing is I did college television. And so when I was doing that, I had to go live I was on ESPN2 in North Carolina once a week for a couple years. And so basically that would be live and I couldn't make a mistake. And so I got better at basically turning on this voice of like, you're reading the teleprompter now and figuring out how to speak in a way that it doesn't look like I'm reading. So it takes a little bit of time, but I recommend.
Cheers, thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Cool. Tanya.
Hey, David.
Hey.
So firstly, I'm going to fangirl because that was amazing. You are exactly the type of person that I relate to. And my accountability partner on here, Buran, dared me to say something that he didn't think I would say. And I wrote to him and I said, this man in 5 minutes would have me drop my pants because the way you articulate yourself, I was just like, oh my God, definitely I relate. So thank you very much. So now to say something sensible, I think a lot of what you put across is ultimately for me about confidence, and everything you articulated was very confident, very certain. How long did it take you to get to a point of actually being confident in what you had to say? Because once you believe it, then I can believe it. So how long did it take you to be confident?
Yeah, so I actually don't think, like, I'm gonna sort of question the premise of what you're saying. I don't think it's a function of length. I think it's a function of how many skeptical people have listened to your ideas and started off as really skeptical, telling me that I'm wrong, and then gotten to a place where I've been able to repeat what I'm saying and then have them say, you know what, that works. And the truth is, I teach like 700 students a year. They're super skeptical. They pay a lot of money for rite of passage, and they have super high standards. They don't all have dogs that are as cute as Matt's, but they do have super high standards and they ask great questions. And so very deliberately, what we do after every single rite of passage session is we look at every single question in the chat and we say, okay, here are all the questions. Then every single time we reiterate the course, we answer all those questions and we make sure that next time in the presentation, we are answering and anticipating the questions. After every single cohort, we do a survey. We get hundreds and hundreds of responses. I look at every single one of them and then add them to the top of every live session and then answer those questions once again. And I also have people on Twitter who are super skeptical. They're probably stuck in their parents' basement, have nothing better to do besides get mad at me and try to basically straw man every single thing I say. You do that for a couple years and you get pretty confident.
Cool.
Awesome.
Deepak.
Hey, David. Really enjoyed the presentation. I'm following you from I think a very long time on Twitter, and I've seen, the progress of how your followers increasing, your course, and so loved it. So I have one question. You mentioned about write like it should sound like a music, and people should love it. So I have one question on this particular aspect, because a lot of it is related to articulation. And is articulation a skill that you can learn, or is articulation sometimes very much limited to your vocabulary also? If you don't know the right words, you can't express those emotions that you're feeling. So my question is that, is this like a process like we are going through in this PTYA, that we know that if you do this 10 things, you will be set with the basic stuff, right? So is it the same in writing, or it needs a lot of other things that you have to learn and then come like a basic requirements?
Interesting. So, okay, I mean, I've been living in Mexico for the last month, and so I very much know how hard it is to be articulate in a language that's not your first language. And so there's an element there of reading the dictionary. I was talking about this Eminem video. Eminem used to just sit and read the dictionary so that he could have access to a big vocabulary of words. I had a friend come over yesterday, and he was like, "Why is there a dictionary on your living room table?" And I was like, well, because when I read, I always, if I find a book or a word in a book that I don't know, I open it up to the actual dictionary. It's a giant Webster's dictionary. It's twice the size of my head. And I open it up, I look through it, and I actually study the way that words are constructed, the way that they're shaped. And so I'm always trying to think about that stuff. That's the first thing. So yes, you do want a good vocabulary. But the other thing is it's not totally binary at all. Like, you're never going to get to a place where like you're happy with how you're doing as a writer. You're happy with how you're doing as a creator. Because the day that you're happy, you're kind of just dead as a creator. Like, to be alive is to be in a constant bout of evolution and change. Like, I got some plants downstairs that are in such good health, but in 2 weeks, if nothing changed, if I didn't do anything to water them, if I didn't do anything to fertilize them, they would be less healthy then than they are now. So as a creator, you need to be, and this is a sort of flip side of Tanya's question about confidence, you need to be, and this is the hard part, this is what I really struggle with as a human. It's like, how do I push myself without being negative, without like being self-loathing? How do I be honest about my inability to articulate, the ways that I can improve to always get better? And so I feel like what you're asking here is like, is there a binary thing? The truth is, you're never going to be happy with your ability to articulate. But rather than saying, oh, like, damn it, I can't create, it's like, no, let's welcome that. Let's actually dance with those struggles, and let's say, how do we get good at creating, and how do we find beauty in the process of growth and development?
Got it. And now I will, not ask the intelligent way of, how I was asking the question and dumbed down. We saw the iceberg video, and if we see the script, right, a lot of us would want to say the same feelings, right? But when we will write, it will sound very boring and not motivating. Whereas Casey wrote such a simple words, but they were so motivating. So is this what the change can be brought up by a course, or is this something that can be learned, or just wanted to understand that part?
Totally. I mean, look, like, what you want to do is, I think, a couple things. The first is you want to basically say, okay, what can every medium give me, right? Like, there are certain constraints of different mediums. So writing, for example, allows you to find the perfect articulation of a word. Whereas when you speak, and especially when you add music into that, you can show confidence, you can show emphasis. Right now, what I'm saying isn't nearly as memorable as what I'm saying right now, right? So I can actually change the tone and and the strength of my words. And then this is why I was sort of talking about images, enhancing images, right? We looked at that Death of Socrates piece. It's so fun when we can just point back to all of these like intellectual hyperlinks and sort of build upon them. We can look at that Death of Socrates piece and we can say, wow, now that's taking advantage of the video, it's taking advantage of writing, it's taking advantage of music, and it's taking advantage of visuals. And in the concert of all those things, you end up with something really beautiful and articulate. And so to articulate, what I love about your question is it's not just about speech and vocabulary. You have different kinds of vocabularies. You have a vocabulary of music that you use. You have a vocabulary of visuals that you use and how you actually use them. And so what you want to do is you almost want to be like modally ambidextrous. So you have all these different tools and you want to be able to use all of them. It's like a soccer player. You want to be as good with your left foot as your right foot. And that then creates great players, even though you have people like Ronaldo who normally kick with their right foot and Messi who normally kick with their left foot. They can both use both of them.
Yeah, great answer. Yeah, makes sense. Thank you very much, David.
Cool. Alicia.
Okay, thank you so much, David. This was amazing. And of course, that word doesn't convey it. Quick question is, I've heard people say that they don't like to watch other people, the content they've created on the topic, and they don't want to sort of pollute their thinking, and they don't want to wind up like accidentally repeating and being unoriginal, essentially. So what would you say about that as pertains to this whole approach of stealing like an artist and stripping? And because that's all also very exciting. And then also, how would you relate this to research in general?
Yes. Okay. So I think that what you're saying is a kind of intellectual laziness that a lot of people do, which is basically, let me create Y thing by looking at all of these, what other people have done, and basically combining them and building on top of them. Honestly, I don't think that that's a bad way to get started as a creator, but that isn't where you want to end up as a creator. I used to do that all the time, and I'm very happy that I did. I just was sort of able to transcend that. But like, that's actually a fine place to start. Of course, you want to credit your sources and stuff like that, but I have no issue with being unoriginal when you're starting, like none at all. I think that the sort of obsession with originality is sort of ridiculous. And it also just takes a lot of time for people to get original. It's like, if you study great artists, they're just trying to mimic their influences at the beginning. There's no other way to do it. And it's through years and years of experience that they end up with some semblance of originality. And so when I first started, literally what I did was I just took my notes, I recombined the notes, I then found like a new way of saying it that was a little bit better, and then I built upon it. Now, on Monday, I'm going to publish an 18,000 word piece about the liberal arts. I've spent about 14 months working on this essay, and it's gone through no less than 7 or 8 full revisions, been edited by like 20 people. Like, that is what it takes to get something that's deeply original. Like, that is hundreds and hundreds of hours of work. My editor jokes that I should just publish this as a book. And the point is, like, original ideas are really hard to come by. And when you start, I would just focus on the quantity, get stuff out there, and over time you can focus and naturally build up your originality. Don't be so hard on yourself, Alicia.
Thank you so much. And one thought that comes to mind, I don't know if you comment on this as an extension, is in a way, it seems as if we have very inspirational people that we're looking to steal from, then we distill from that as us, that could potentially create better content than if we're just sort of looking at like all the sort of fray that's out there. Would you agree with that, or is that just perfectionism verbalized?
So explain what you mean by that.
Okay, for instance, if you look at maybe like master something or others, whether that's filmmakers, as you talked about today, or artists, as you talked about today, versus looking at other YouTubers who are maybe kind of at the ground level that we'd be at. Oh, I don't hear you.
I think you can take inspiration from anybody. I want to show you this video. So this is from my very favorite musician. His name is Porter Robinson. And as you can see, like I pull in creative influences from everywhere, but I think Porter Robinson, I'm making a YouTube documentary about him. It's like 35 minutes long and it's just killing me, but I'm trying to communicate because this thing needs to be made. It has nothing to do with my work. It's just like me like playing around. And I'm trying to communicate what makes Porter such an amazing artist. Listen to 35 seconds of this video, and I want to answer your question explicitly. Listen to how he takes other people's inspiration. Listen to this, because he's deeply original, but listen to what he's doing as an artist. Oh, I freaking love this stuff. Okay, hold on. Let me make sure that the sound is going. Cool.
The best advice I feel I can give other people who are trying to do creative work is to try to make your own favorite thing. That's what I always do. I'm always trying to take the stuff that I love and resynthesize it into something that would be my own favorite song. Because when you're trying to make something that's someone else's favorite thing, you're just kind of guessing. You're like chasing a shadow of what you think someone else's taste would be. But you should be able to know your own taste really well. And so that's a guiding light for me, is trying to make my own favorite stuff.
Okay, so what I want to focus on there is, did you hear the word resynthesize in your own favorite stuff? So what Porter is doing is you could basically take his favorite artists. So you could take, like, going back to, he likes Daft Punk, Tiesto, like Amaguchi, Madeon, and like 2 other people. You could basically take the 6 artists that are his influences. You could basically mash them up and end up with something very similar to Porter. So you can actually hear sonically that he's pulling from all these people. Resynthesizing is the word that he's going for. But what he's trying to do is bring those, basically invite those artists into his heart, have them inhabit his heart so deeply that then what comes out of him is, yes, it's those people, but it's been resynthesized into his own favorite thing. And I guess to answer this very deliberately is just, it doesn't matter what it is. Just consume your favorite things and love them by having them become a part of your soul, letting them live and grow inside of you. And then over time, the seeds of what other people give you turn into flowers of your own that then bloom and blossom into something that's original.
That's so gorgeous. Thank you. That's perfect.
Cool.
I'm glad
we've got 3 more hands.
Took a little while.
3 more hands. Let's take these last 3 questions. Ali.
All right. I'm going to be quick on the last 3, except for maybe Matt, because Matt deserves all the time in the world.
Hi, David. Great session. My favorite workshop so far, actually. I have a question about educational content. So my YouTube channel would be all about the course creation business and like how you can create your courses and how you can take them to the next level and stuff. And sometimes, for example, the content is quite educational. Like, for example, how to do email marketing. That said, I do want to distinguish myself from all these other channels that are just giving educational content. So the way I think that's possible is with good scripting, good writing, so I can tell a better story as to like why email marketing, for example, even matters. I was wondering if you have any advice or any ideas as to how to make this happen even better for specifically educational content.
Yeah. Okay. So let me show you a video. 1 second. Okay, I can't find it. But basically, I have a video where I think that what you want to do is you just want to take metaphors on your side. So, I mean, Matt knows this. So in Write a Passage, what we do is we come up with all this different language to basically freshen things up. So you talk about email marketing, right? Okay, so how do you actually write an email, right? So let's talk about how do we sit down once a week and write emails. So you could say, the first thing, which would be sort of boring, Ali, which would be something like, well, what you do is you take all the things that you've consumed and you then say, what were the best things that I've consumed that then I like didn't put into my other work? And then basically I sort of repackage them. And then my email list is like the best things that I consume. Okay, it's like really boring, right? It's like totally trite and cliche. Alternatively, you could tell the story of Joe's Barbecue in 1971, Kansas City barbecue shop. And Joe's was a really popular place. And so what would happen is all these people would stand outside of the barbecue shop. There'd be a big line. And one day the owner of Joe's went up to all the people and he basically had a big bucket. And the bucket had all these burnt ends. And what burnt ends are is when you make brisket, the edges, they get burned because of the way that they're sort of heated by fire. And they're like a really fatty cut that they just didn't sell. And so they were, rather than throwing them away, they just gave them to the customers. And all of a sudden the customers really loved them. And the customers started eating these burnt ends. And now, 40 years later, if you go to Joe's Barbecue, the burnt ends are the #1 best-selling thing on the menu. So all I said the first time was take your burnt ends and turn them into an email newsletter. But it sounded so trite and cliche. Then I said, I told you a story. I wrapped it up in barbecue, this Kansas City, this, like, if you ever had burnt ends, they're freaking delicious. And they didn't used to be something that people would sell. That's what my newsletter is. It's the burnt ends of my intellectual life. And so what you can do as a creative is you basically say, what am I trying to say? How do I de-clicheify it? This is why I do drawings on Twitter, because now everyone's copying me, copying my style in terms of talking about writing. A lot of the ideas are pretty cliche because they've actually gone out into the world, which is great. That's this world of online writing is really becoming a thing. So what I do is I go on Twitter now and I draw things because I know that now what I've done is I've taken words and ideas that would otherwise sort of be diluted, and I just freshen them up with a drawing, and now they feel new and novel in a way that sticks in people's heads. The same idea. So that would be my recommendation to you.
And great. Just one more question while we're at this. So when you want to actually now sit down and script this, let's say this exact video that you said, would you first brain dump all the real content, all the things that you want to say, and then put a story on top of it? Or would you think in a story from the start while you start writing?
It depends, and you want to get good at both. But every video you make is like a child. And whenever you talk to a parent, they say child 1, child 2, child 3, they all have different personalities. And no matter how much parents, before they have kids, want to basically say, I'm going to do this for this child, I'm going to do this for that child, I'm going to like make them perfect. No, nature is a thing. And every kid, you have to raise them differently. And it's the same thing when you make videos. You take in the piece and you have to learn to listen to the piece. Your piece is, every video that you're making is talking to you. And at a certain point, originally, the piece serves you. But at a certain point, you got to flip around. You got to say, I need to start serving the piece. And that's when you listen to the piece and do what it's telling you.
Great, thanks.
Cool. Adnan, and we'll end with Matt.
Well, I'm going to answer these. I don't know. I'm just going to answer this one quick. I'm getting exhausted. So,
well, that's great.
Thank you, David, for sticking around.
I'm not going to drop my pants, but it was a wonderful talk. Wanted to know, what one thing would you say you wish you knew or you learned earlier? Like Ali says, oh, editing, I should have outsourced that immediately in hindsight. So in retrospect, what would you have done?
I don't know. I mean, I'm really happy with how things are going. I mean, I think I'll be able to answer that better. I mean, I think that I don't know, like I'm not really a successful YouTuber yet. So we have good YouTube videos, but we don't really have a big audience.
To make it faster for yourself.
Yeah, honestly, I know that we all want to be fast, but I just think YouTube takes time. And honestly, I think that my advice that I'm giving to myself is not to rush to it, to just enjoy making these videos, and so that I can just be okay with, not being the YouTuber I want to be, and just be really proud of the videos. And I don't want to rush, like I feel like it's so easy to sort of always be in a rush. I need to be successful faster. I need to, all these sorts of things. And, sometimes that's true. I think that that's really true for just making money to pay the rent, buy food, but like, we're making YouTube videos. Let's enjoy ourselves a little. Let's not rush. I think that that's the advice that I would give myself. And I'm with you, man. I wish it was happening faster, but it happens slowly, and it's just about showing up enough. And I think in order to do that, you got to love the process.
Cool. Matt.
Faster. Oh, takes a long time, but
everything does. By the way, I will be back for the next cohort. I told you, until you block my IP address, I'm going to keep showing up. So
are you going to be a mentor?
I absolutely. I'd love to come back as a mentor.
Awesome.
It'd be great. So quick question. By the way, real quick, if you were watching this and you enjoyed that 1 hour rocket ship that we just went on, imagine doing that for 6 weeks with a great group of students, a group of mentors that care deeply about your progress and David's leadership. It's hard, it's emotional, it's fun. I greatly recommend it. He didn't ask me to say any of that. I'm just sharing that. But so my question quickly, I really enjoyed the stuff on voice, and I'm curious about your thoughts on the evolution of voice, because I think sometimes we think it sort of comes down to us on this stone tablet and it's chiseled and we have our voice and we keep it forever. I'm not sure it quite works like that. So I'm curious about your thoughts on how it evolves.
I'm not going to be fair to you. I'm going to make you answer this question because you already know the answer. So the first time you were ever an alumni mentor, after the 4th week, one of your mentees, Cheryl, came up to me and she said, "You won't believe what happened in Matt's mentor group. He created a space of such openness and of such real productive vulnerability that he just didn't have when he first started off as a mentor. And then last time you did the same thing. So where did that come from? Where did that voice come from and how has it developed for you?"
I didn't see this curveball coming. Well, okay, so related to what you said, it happens in motion, right? You only get there through action. And I guess that process of action never stops. So you're putting, whether you're teaching or writing, you're putting content out there, you're getting feedback, you're slowly getting more comfortable, and you start to let more of yourself out and more of your own vulnerability be exposed. And that tends to resonate with people. So in answering my own question, it doesn't ever end.
It doesn't ever end. And then could you have seen the idea that you had last cohort to try to do a daily or multiple article a week session? Could you have seen that when you first started as a mentor?
No. And even things that we would do 2 or 3 weeks into the session, I couldn't have seen, 14 days earlier. So you have to let it unfold, I guess, and keep rolling with it. You're never done.
We did it. That's better than I could have said. You know the answer. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks very much for that. I'm sure David will pay Matt later for that plug.
That was such a good answer.
Yeah. Thanks very much, David. Hopefully people can join your course. That was an incredible talk as usual. And hopefully you can come back for cohort 4.
And then 50 days of writing, I just threw in the chat. So you'll get 50 emails from me. If you want, you'll learn really just all the stuff I just discussed. So thank you, Angus. And thanks everyone for being patient with me. I needed some extra time.
Cheers, David. Thanks for that. And thanks everyone. See you tomorrow.